I want to hear you guys basically talk about your kids.
Our kids, not our dating and getting married.
I got plenty of footage of your dating and your early married life, but that's about as far as I got. So I don't have any stories about what you went through to get kids. And I guess we briefly talked about not having kids, but not a.
So personal.
It took us 8 years to get
Micah,
the
10 months
kids.
later, Ezra shows up.
And remember the time when Micah pulled Ezra through the bars? Or
I don't know how he got out, but one day Micah came in carrying Ezra, and I have no idea how he got him out of the crib. I don't think he would fit through the bars, and I didn't see that he had climbed on anything and reached up and got him. I don't know. I don't think I want to know how he got out of the crib. But when we were first married, we were expecting that we could have a family right away, and we didn't. And I just remember there were a lot of things that we could have done as far as activities like taking a vacation or going somewhere, anything that had to be planned in advance, like a trip to Hawaii or anything like that, we didn't do because I was always thinking, well, I might get pregnant, and couldn't go right then. So it was always up our mind, in our minds, that would happen to us. And when it didn't, we did finally get to have, we had blessings from a bishop in different places where we lived, but when we were living in Vallejo, yes, and the stake was being divided, and they were sending Marquis Peterson out to divide the stake, and we got permission to write to him and ask if we could meet with him, have an appointment, and get a blessing from him.
So who was he at that
He
point
was
in time?
sitting as number 2 chair of the Council of 12 in general. He was an apostle,
Okay.
okay? And he was in the number 2 chair at the time. So he'd been an apostle for a long time to get to be that far. But anyway, we did go and meet him there, and he kind of commented that he said if I had known that I would be dividing a stake, because there's a lot of work involved there, that I wouldn't have seen you, and I would just, I mean, we were there already, but I just thought, oh, to not have this happen now, would have been very disappointing. But they invited us into the office, and he gave me a blessing, and in that circle was him, 2 state presidents, regional representatives. There were all of these people, and there was David. And that's what kept us from being translated at that point, I think. But the blessing itself was very interesting. You know how people adapt a certain persona when they are praying? He didn't. He just was talking to a good old friend. He put his hands on my head and had this conversation with somebody that he knew very well and loved. And he did mention that there are many people who would love to have a family, and that here are good people that you could send a family to, and this nice little conversation. But after we got out, we went down to the car, and then we sat there and just held each other and cried, because it was really going to happen this time. And
30 days later,
yeah, I was, at that time of my cycle, I could have gotten pregnant at that time, but I didn't. I got pregnant the next time, so you can't say that happened right then. However, he was born 9 months later, because he came at 8 months. So did Ezra. Ezra came 8 months, but he was, the funny thing is, when we were getting this blessing, never occurred to us to get maternity insurance, but having babies was a lot more affordable then. I think it was only like $1,000. And it never occurred to us that it might happen again, and maybe we should get, well, we did. We got maternity insurance
For the
after
second.
that for Ezra,
Yeah.
because, but we had to have a note from our doctor saying when his actual due date, because you have to have had it 10 months before the child in order for them to pay, because you couldn't get it, oh, I'm pregnant, let's go get insurance. No, you have to do it ahead of time. So we did, and he also was born at eight months, and I got pregnant when Micah was 2 months old, and then Ezra came 8 months later, and that made, well, anyway, it
Difference
worked
of
out.
10
We had
months
insurance
between.
for him, and the price went up to $1,400, so it's a good thing we had insurance. And Micah was a happy baby, and he loved his bath. He loved water. He loved getting in and swimming in this little tub that he had and everything. He thought that was great stuff. When Micah was born, he had the cord wrapped around his neck, and he had also had swum around enough that he had tied the cord into a knot. But we always wonder if that's some point where he has some fine motor muscle difficulties. And that could have been as a result of the cord and his birth. And as he came down the birth canal, as he would come down forward, the cord would tighten around his neck. So they really had to get him out quickly.
You really had to rip that.
Yeah, the doctor just pulling all his cord off of around his neck and everything. So, and Ezra's birth was, well, first of all, I was very sick with Micah. I was sick with all my pregnancies, except Ezra, because my body was so used to being pregnant that it already adjusted, and I didn't get sick with him. But and he came pretty quickly. I think I had a whole 20-minute labor with him. I went to the hospital for a check, and she checked me and says, gosh, you're already, what, 7 centimeters dilated or something like that? You're going to have this baby now. And I said I'm not, because I'm not having any contractions. And she says, you get ready and we'll make sure you have some contractions. And David and I were playing a game in a book or something, and all of a sudden, whoa, one contraction, kaboom! That is it. He was there 20 minutes later.
Did you tell him what?
Oh, with Micah. With Micah, we had taken the classes and trying to breathe and focus and all that, and I was just really trying to focus. And first of all, David kept watching the monitor and he'd say, oh, look, you're having a contraction. Darn, I knew I was having a contraction. Didn't need me told, but I was focusing so hard, and he leaned over me. I have no idea what possessed me, but I just reached up and I bit him right on the chest. And he never got close to me again whenever I was in labor.
That's right.
He kind of stand back. He liked to watch the monitor. But I still don't know why I did, but I was just focused. I had to chomp down on something, and there it was. I just chomped down. But, and so they were 10 months apart. With Micah, I think his first words to learn were gruck. He loved the truck, and he loved to go riding in the truck. And he'd get up in the morning, and he'd go from his bed, and he'd lean on the front door, and he'd say, go bye-bye, Mommy, go bye-bye. And he liked to ride in the truck. And he and Ezra were a lot of fun. We have pictures of them eating an ice cream cone, and the dogs, we had 2 little dogs kind of like this size, leaning over and wanting to help them lick it. And I think it was Mike that finally took his ice cream cone and rubbed it around on the the deck outside, and I think the dog got the rest of it at that point. But
Question about Micah and the truck. Is he the one? I think I remember a story where you said, like, you didn't give him any water.
So he took Micah out on the truck, and at different times, and he, not this first time, but he later on, he could lay him in the back of the truck on the outside and change his diapers and dress him, everything, and the other truck drivers around were always fascinated with what he could do. But one time that he went, I packed his diaper bag and everything, and off they went, and when he came home, Micah ran and stood next to the sink with his signal that he was thirsty. And because he didn't talk real good till he was a little older. And so I was in the diaper bag, and every diaper in there was nice and clean and dry. And he was by the sink, and I gave him a drink of water, and just glug, 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 glug. It all went down real fast, and another one. And I said, "Didn't you give him any water?" And David
I
said,
said, he didn't ask.
he never asked for a drink, so he never got one. So that was the thing. 2 years later, Joseph came, and I will say that I needed to go. We were in Vallejo. I needed to drive over to like San Rafael or someplace over by the ocean to do some shopping, but I changed my mind and I didn't go that day. And it's a good thing. I decided, well, I'll take the boys to, we were going to go to Arby's and buy some lunch, so at least we could get out together. And let's see. I was standing in Arby's, and all of a sudden my water broke. So I grabbed the kids and we left. We didn't get any sandwiches. And I had a towel in the car to sit on, and I got home, and I called David and said, I'm in labor, need to come home. My neighbor, Mary Matthews, was going to watch the two boys for me while I went. And
The bishop was there,
oh
right?
no, that was with Micah. But Mary kept running out and saying, hurry, hurry. And David just took his time. He came in, he sat down, he changed his shoes, because he couldn't wear his shoes that he walked around the truck yard with to the hospital. Changed his shoes, went out to the car, helped me in. We got to the hospital. Oh, and we had a friend who lived near the hospital come and help David give me a blessing, and then we went into the hospital, and I think it was 20 minutes later, Joseph was there. You could have changed your shoes faster, but they got him out and they held him up for me to see, and then they ran over to another room where this lady had been in labor for several hours and showed him to her and said, see, this is what we want you to do. Then they brought him back so we could admire him. So, but yeah, I remember when I started labor with Micah, and we were still taking our classes. So I was the only woman in there who got to not finish the class. I already had my baby. But, so I woke up in the morning, had a real bad backache. Didn't feel like I was going to be having a baby. It just, my back hurt. And David was going to go play racquetball that day, but I asked him not to, and he said, "Oh, I wouldn't go. I think you're in labor," because I can have to say, "No, I'm not in labor. It's just that my back hurts," because this is still 5 weeks early. And
This is for who?
Micah.
Okay.
And we called the bishop, and he came over and gave me a blessing with David, and then we zoomed out. We were kind of worried. I mean, it was our first baby after all these years. And so.
And he kept trying to hurry me along, you know.
Yeah, get. And let's see, that was kind of the morning, and he was born about 1:15 or something like that. And with Ezra, somebody was watching Micah, I know, let's see, and we're at the hospital, and he came 10 months, 1 hour, and 20 minutes later, so he was probably born about 2:35. And trying to think there was something else about that. But, oh, all of our children have been jaundiced. Micah, we got to bring him home one day after we had him. And we just had to lay him in the sunshine in the window where the sun was coming in. And Ezra, we took home like the next day after he was born, and the next day after that he turned this nice bright yellow, and I knew what it was. He was jaundiced. So we took him back to the hospital, and they couldn't readmit him to the nursery because he'd already been out in the world, exposed to germs and everything. So they put him in a room, a hospital room. He was right across the hall from the nurses, but they didn't have a facility there for infants. And he was in his little infant bed in that room. And they had to come in several times a day and draw blood out of him. He still has scars on his heels where they would draw blood, and it was just, anyway, we had, every night I had to get on the phone, and he was there until he was 2 weeks old. And he had to get on the phone and call and have somebody watch Micah during the day, because he had to be down there at the truck yard. And got Micah back home, and I hadn't really seen him for like almost a couple of weeks. And a boy who's 10 months old can grow a lot when you're used to this little teeny tiny baby that you've been holding. And he just looked like a different kid. One, he'd grown, and they had cookied him to death. I think he put on 3 pounds in those 2 weeks.
But he didn't need the pacifier anymore.
Oh well, Dad took his pacifier away from him. So that was it. But he just went, whoa, I could hardly recognize him. And let's see.
Were there any sort of stories regarding Joseph's conception or your expecting of him?
No, just Ezra. We were supposed to go on a little trip that morning. Then we went down to Disneyland, and we didn't get up and leave right when we should. And I got home and realized I was pregnant, and that was the only time we had any opportunities to get that way, was to not finish packing when I said we need to get up and finish packing. But Joseph, I don't really remember, but there was a miscarriage between the two of you, which is why you have 3 years between you. When I got pregnant with you, we had just moved into our house in Fairfield out on Solana Road, and they had asked me to direct a play at church. It was a full-length play, a musical called Because of Elizabeth. And I said, no, I can't, because I always get pregnant in January. And I didn't. So they came back and said, okay, now can you direct the play? And I said, I guess I can't. I didn't get pregnant. And that's when I got pregnant. But I didn't get sick, and I didn't throw up until after the play closed. And then I could throw up. It was a real blessing. And Joseph, and we had a wood-burning stove, and that's how we kept warm. We didn't use our furnace for the first few years.
This is at the house in Fairfield,
Yes,
on
on
Solana
Solana
Road.
Road. And one day, Joseph was in the family room where the stove was, and I walked in, and he's standing there holding a piece of newspaper like a torch. He had put it in the stove, he'd opened the stove, put it in there, and it got lit, and he's standing there holding it. And I tried to be very, very calm and tell him, put that down. Now in my mind, he would have put it down on the hearth, right where he was standing. He didn't. He turned and he put it down on the rug. But the rug didn't catch fire, but there was a nice melted spot where he had put it down, and we were all safe and didn't. And I probably should tell about Joseph when we had to tie him up. He was maybe first, before I'm going to do that, I'm going to tell about when we actually moved in to our house on Solona Road. I had gone to a garage sale with Linda Barney, and the people who owned it, the Hamlins, were selling things, and the house was up for sale. It had been sold, so they were having their yard sale. And later on, I wanted David, we had never been out that area and seen the little farmlands that people had out there. It was 2.5 acres per lot, and some of them were 2 and 3 lots big. And so we had been out of town visiting a friend who lived kind of out that direction. So on the way home, I told David that I wanted to go down this road because I wanted him to see what the area was like. Are we running out of?
No, yeah, I'm
Okay.
just checking.
Okay, and with that very same house, the loan had fallen through, so it was up for sale again. We liked the area. So the next day, we called the lady who was the realtor for it, saw the home, and also saw one further down the street. But this one was it. We put an offer on it that same night. And everything was going through. We had made arrangements. We were able to sell the house that we lived in on Azalea Court. And there's a story about Ezra walking away with the dogs on Azalea Court. But a policeman found him several blocks away before I knew he was gone. That helped. But anyway, so we had sold our house, and the people that were going to move into our house had sold their house, and the people that were going to move into their house were selling their house. So all of these houses were lined up in a row, and as soon as one would close, then the next one would get their money, they could close, then they would get their money and they could close, and there were these 4 houses in a row. And it was December. And I had little children. I had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I needed to make Christmas. I needed to get the tree up. I mean, Christmas was a really big deal. And we were just living in all of these boxes, and we couldn't get anywhere, and we couldn't leave, and every day something else would come up and it didn't go through. Something else would come up and that didn't go through. And it was extremely frustrating. I was really, really frustrated. And then at the end of the year, when we saw our accountant, he asked us when our home had sold, because it seems that if you live in a house less than 18 months, you have to pay a capital gains tax on the house when you sell it. We lived in that house for 18 months and 3 days before we could move into Solona Road. And if we had moved when I told God that we needed to move, and He was frustrating me because all of these other things weren't happening like I wanted them to, we would have had to pay that capital gains tax. But we didn't. And that's just one of the many blessings that we've experienced in our life. Okay. Joseph was, I think you were born, and he was 3. And
Trying to keep this a little bit chronologically, I'm thinking, wasn't there a story about the kids coming to you wanting another child? Wanting another...
that was you. Micah came in and he said that he needed a baby sister. But that was after I was already pregnant with you.
Okay.
He wanted a baby sister, and I let him get out all the girl baby clothes and put them in the drawer so we'd be all ready for the baby sister. But baby sister didn't come. We named him Caleb, and first Micah was kind of disappointed, but I put you on Micah's lap, and I had Micah look at you, and you looked at him, and I said, just see, Heavenly Father knows the right one to send to our home. And look at this baby. See how much he loves you already? he's so happy to be here and you to be his big brother, and he bought it. And it was all right to have a boy instead of a girl. Okay, back to Joseph. I learned the difference between knowledge and wisdom with him. He taught me that. Knowledge and wisdom are not the same things. Joseph had knowledge. He knew how to go turn the handle on that door and get outside. That was knowledge. What he didn't have was wisdom. He didn't have the wisdom not to go outside. But we had a dog at the time. Theo was the dog. And she came to us on a morning when school was out for the day, like, I think it was President's Day, something like that. The kids were home for one day, and Ezra got up and he opened the front door and there was his dog sitting on the doorstep. And she stayed and he played with her all day. It was a perfect day to have a dog show up on your doorstep because we didn't have any dogs. And it really, really helped. But anyway, everybody liked Theo, and Theo was a good member of the family. And Joseph would go out of the house and cross the driveway to the main road. Now, we didn't have a lot of traffic on this particular road. We were more rural. But he would go out on the road and the dog would see him and the dog would just go running along. He followed Joseph and the dog would get ahead and Joseph would follow the dog and they'd follow each other. Fortunately, Joseph would turn right down the next road. If he had turned left, he'd have been out on the busy highway. But he turned right and he went down that road and turned right again and went down. I think I found him by where the Bradfords lived.
Did they not live there yet?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Well, maybe they did. I don't remember, but I'm just saying, that's how far away from home he was.
That's about half a mile.
Yeah, and he did that a couple of times. And I could not explain to him that he couldn't do it. And and that door had just a little lock in it. I mean, he could just unlock it and go out, and I couldn't always have him with me, and I trusted him to play with the toys in there. So anyway, I just thought, okay, I told him, I can't trust you, I can't watch you, so I'm going to have to tie you up. And we had a wrought iron railing at one edge of the room between that and the dining area. And I put a belt on him, and I clipped 2 dog leashes to it, and clipped them to the wrought iron railing, and we brought his little bed in. So his little bed was on one side of the railing, the dining table was on the other side, so he's part of our family. He could eat dinner with us. And just in the living room in the corner there where he could still reach were all the toys. He was a happy clam. He wanted to be a dog. He tugged on that chain and I guess he barked, and he just thought it was wonderful. And so at night when he slept in his little bed or had a nap, I undid the belt from him. But he had to do that, and that was about a Monday or a Tuesday. He was very happy, but not a problem. On Friday, his best friend in the whole world, who's the same age, Eddie Harris, came over. And Eddie Harris didn't want to be just inside playing, and I could trust Eddie Harris. He didn't go out into the street. And Eddie wanted to go out and play, and Joseph couldn't go out. He couldn't be trusted. And he learned a really big lesson that day. And so we had a talk, and I never had any trouble with him running away after that. Till he got into seminary. His last year of seminary, he picked up one of the boys' neighbors in the ward and took him to seminary, and then he sat out in his car and listened to the radio and didn't go in. I had no idea. No seminary teacher called and said, your son has quit coming to seminary. Do you know about it? No, I had no idea till he told me later. Have you got anything to confess to me now? We can get it on tape.
Let's see. Other stories about Joseph that I don't think he ever told you.
Oh, okay. When we did get to take a fabulous summer vacation, and we went to Disney World, which is clear on the other side of the United States. And they had a deal going on at that time that for every adult ticket you bought, you could get a free child's ticket on the airplane. So Micah was 13, so had to pay an adult fare. But Ezra, Joseph, and Caleb were still considered children, which they were, and so we could fly them for free round trip.
Still,
He needs to be petted. You've only petted him an hour. And
I've been timing it. It's only 30 minutes.
oh, okay. So we went to Disney World, and I think we kind of had to fly out in the evening. It was going to be like an overnight flight or something, and we had to change
I seem to remember
planes in.
we left at
Texas.
midnight. I think the plane took off at midnight.
But we were awake and excited and watching movies or something, but when we got to change planes in Texas, that plane didn't get to leave right away. We'd sat on the tarmac for 2 or 3 hours. But we didn't mind, we were all dead asleep by then. But we stayed inside the park in a nice apartment condo. It was 2 stories, and they had a kitchen and a living room, and in the living room it had a bed that pulled down, and upstairs were two bedrooms. So we had 2 boys in one room. I think the 2 older boys must have been in the bed that pulled down, and David and I were in the other room. And
I remember that. It was
only.
only.
Great.
I remember it because it was like a whole house.
Yes,
there.
it was.
Not a hotel room. It was like having our own little house.
It was, because we had a kitchen, and the kitchen all had dishes in it and everything, and we'd go to the grocery store, and they had the most wonderful orange juice in Florida. It was all fresh squeezed.
I got just a second, I gotta take a pill.
Okay, we will continue. We'll talk about Disney World. But we were there for 10 days, and we were there in June because right in the middle of our 10 days was Sunday, Father's Day. And by the time we got to then, we'd been there for probably 5 days, and the parents were getting a little worn out. But I let Micah and Ezra and Joseph, so 11, 12, he would have been 10, but you were 7, so I didn't let you go out on your own with them. You stayed with us. And I don't remember that you complained about it much, but at any rate, we stayed home that one day, and you could get on a bus and go all of these different places and everything, and you have passes for everything because we prepaid and bought everything. And it was really nice. We went back long after you guys were all grown and everything. David and I went back for a vacation at Disney World. We even bought one of the bricks, so if you go back again, you'll find our name there by one of the entrances or exits or something. But we went to all the different worlds and Epcot Center and all the other things. We didn't even get to see all of it, and it's much bigger now.
I remember. I think you felt guilty that I didn't get to go out that one day when all my brothers did, and so you made up. You tried to make it up to me a little bit later. I think you took me to Marine World.
Oh, really?
It was just me.
Oh, I don't remember that. What a nice mother I must have been.
Oh, I'm surprised you don't remember that, because I was a kid. I
remember.
I don't remember as a kid that being the reason we did that. I remember that was something you mentioned later, and I thought about it, and I remembered doing that.
Huh.
I remembered you and I going in the car.
Marine World, which is down there in Vallejo.
Yeah, I remember actually while we were going down the freeway, there was the big billboard up there for the Woos, because that was a thing at the time.
Oh.
And I remember I saw that, and just in my little childhood enthusiasm, I'm like, the Woos! And you were like, oh, do you want to go there instead? It'd be cheaper. I think you were like about to like shift lanes and everything, pull around right then to take me to the Woos instead.
I don't remember
But
our Woos.
I was like, no, I want to go to Marine World. I don't even remember exactly that it was Marine World, but it's the only other place it could have been.
Yeah, but I do remember being in Marine World a couple of times.
Woos was the place with the big wooden maze.
Remember,
Oh, yeah, that was up near Vacaville.
remember Joseph giving his lunch to people?
Oh, yeah. Joseph had a friend there in junior high, and his parents were in bad financial shape, and they didn't ever send him to school with a lunch. And Joseph would come home all hungry because he'd given his lunch to his friend.
But we didn't find out.
Yeah, we
until-
didn't know about it till later. I guess that kind of makes up for skipping seminaries last year. Yeah, I'd forgotten that you and I had gone to Disney, to the Marine World. But Disneyland was really nice. It was a fabulous trip, but
You mean Disney World or Disney?
Disney World,
Right.
yeah, and we'd been to Disneyland a couple of times.
I have no memory of Disneyland. The only time we'd ever gone, I was too young to remember.
Wow.
Let's-
Probably.
Let's
Well,
talk,
wait a minute, one more thing, it made me lose my train of thought, so I guess.
You're talking about Disneyland, Disney World?
Oh, but the next summer was, was the summer we went to Aspen Grove.
I
I'll
remember.
bet you remember Aspen Grove. I loved it. And it was beautiful. Now if you go back, we could stay in a place that had bathroom in the cabin where you were. So, but David had a hard time breathing there. But I loved it because it was so calm and you boys just went. They have all these people that are majoring in recreational activities that took all the kids every day. And so you would have been about 8. And every age group was divided up. And you guys just had a wonderful time. And we had plans that we would take a day and go down into Provo and go around the campus and all of this, see it and everything. And you wouldn't leave. You did not want to go because the next day was going to be pirate treasure or something. And you were so excited about participating in all the activities that were provided for the kids while the parents could kind of go off and do their thing. They had lectures for the parents. I didn't go. But the kids had a great time.
Oh, you poor people. We had Pirate Day and you had lectures?
Yeah,
Oh.
well, no, I went down to the craft hut, which was a building that spanned the river, so it was always cool and nice, and you could hear the water. And I just painted all these little things every day. Had a great time.
I remember that. I remember
Yeah.
you always being at that craft hut, and you'd get like a little sculpture of Christ, like the Christus, and it was just some, I don't remember what some ceramic material, so it was already white, and then you painted it white.
Now that one I did in Relief Society.
I remember you doing something like that there, and
I
because I was just flabbergasted.
I got
It was
the-
already white. Why'd you paint it white?
I think that was Relief Society. I had the letters BYU that were kind of connected, and I painted them blue, and I just had a wonderful time. And David read books and tried to breathe, but
tell them about Caleb.
which one?
When I
don't know.
when I was born,
We just don't have much.
Okay, when Caleb was born, first of all, he didn't come at 8 months. He came 11 days before his due date. And it was the first time I experienced what it was like to be extremely pregnant. And after having had 3 children at 8 months, and not having had that experience, my friends who all experienced it had no sympathy for how pregnant I was and how ready I was to have this baby. As a matter of fact, before I was so pregnant, it was Thanksgiving, we were at your parents' house, and I had been to something down the hall, and my mother-in-law was in the kitchen looking, and as I came around the corner, her eyes were big like this, and she says, "Do you know your stomach got here 5 minutes before you did?" Yeah, I knew that. But I had made arrangements with Wendy Harris that when I had to go to the hospital that she would watch the 3 boys. So we were at Walmart, and Ezra had an appointment with a child psychologist, a member of the church. That same evening it turned out that you were born, and I was at Kmart, Walmart, Kmart. We didn't have a Walmart there then, so I was at Kmart, and I started having contractions, but it was fine. They were not a problem. They weren't really heavy. I wasn't feeling the need to push or anything. And so I went over to talk with the psychiatrist. I think this was our first visit, and we kind of wanted to get acquainted and everything. And I explained that I was having contractions. And he says, oh, and I said, but it's not a problem. They're 5 minutes apart. It's not a problem. And he just goes, ha! You know. And he says, I'll tell you, you go. I will take him over to the Harris's house, Wendy's house, after I work with him. You go. You leave. Take those 2 children and drop them off. And so it was Micah and Joseph. I dropped them off. And it also turned out that, Linda Barney was doing about the same time, and she'd made arrangements with her doctor to be induced that day. So she actually beat me, but she was induced, but she wouldn't tell me she was going to do that because she didn't want to upset me. But it's all right, because when I heard that she had her baby, I said, that's okay, I'm busy having one myself.
It was a difference of a few hours.
Yeah.
So I remember he and I shared a birthday.
Yes, you did. And so after the baby was, after you were born, I called Wendy Harris to tell her about it, and then that's when she told me that Linda had had hers too. But you got to, so I came home, and we had a brown van, and I drove up, and the gate was closed that would let you to the back part of the property. We were at Solana Road, so we had acreage. And so I didn't want to get out and go in. It didn't feel comfortable to get out and walk. And so I sat out there and honked the horn. And I honked the horn, and I honked the horn, and finally somebody comes out and says, what are you doing? Why do you keep honking the horn? I am in labor. We need to go to the hospital, which is down in Vallejo. All of you children were born in Vallejo, not in the same hospital. We were at Kaiser at this time. And but we had a really good friend across the street, John, and I always carried newspapers and a clean towel in the car.
This was John, I'm trying to remember, Lyon, right?
Yes, John Lyon. And
I remember him.
Because he was home all the time, most of the time, because he was retired. And I have really quick labors. And so we asked him if he'd be available if I ever needed him to come and deliver the baby.
Oh, I delivered
Lots of cows.
all kinds of critters.
Yeah, we had a lot of neighbors that did animal delivery. I remember the Gomez's with some cows, and that they assisted using their truck.
Yes, but anyway, we
Some
made
rope.
it to the
Oh
hospital
my goodness, that is a
on
memory.
time, and you weren't born till an hour and a half later. You weren't born till 7:30 or something like that. I mean,
It was
I had plenty of time.
It was like 9 months. Hadn't you already figured out I was taking my time?
I guess. No, it was 9 months less 11 days. But you were the only baby that came with meat on you. You had shoulders. You had arms. You weren't a little skinny winny thing. You were like 8.5 pounds.
Was he jaundiced?
He was. But just like one more day. It was really, I got kind of used to being able to leave my baby at the hospital, go home, have a whole night's sleep, which I would need before the baby came home, and to be able to lay on my tummy if I want, because when you lay on your back, the baby doesn't like laying on your spine, and wiggles all around, and it's just as soon as you find a comfortable place to sleep, the baby's not comfortable, so you have to, everybody moves around again. So it's hard to sleep well when you're in the later stages of pregnancy. But so I got used to the next day going home and then coming back and getting you after a good night's sleep, taking you home. But yes, you were jaundiced. Ezra was jaundiced the most as far as his being in the hospital for 2 weeks. Joseph was only in the hospital for a few more days, but his jaundice bilirubin count was much higher. He had the highest. And he was to the point where they were going to give him a blood transfusion the next day if it didn't come down. And David and someone else came down and gave him a blessing that night. And the next day the bilirubin came down. He wasn't ready to go home yet, but they didn't have to do a complete transfusion for him.
I came with two of the people that I thought
We're the most spiritual.
were most spiritual. And
That's why we called the bishop when I went to labor with Micah.
well, they were Mike Fish, and who was the other one? I can't remember.
I don't remember.
But
I remember who came and gave me a blessing before I went into the hospital with Joseph, because he was home for lunch. He was not Mac, but he was Kent Killian's, worked with him, a veterinarian. He was home for lunch, so he came over and we sat in the parking lot and he gave me a blessing and then whisked me into the hospital, and just a few minutes later, less than an hour, then there was Joseph. So,
now when we look at the people that we have helped financially, when we retired, we paid off Micah's car, I think, and
we wound up giving a car to one of the Bradford boys for a wedding gift. They drove it back to Kentucky.
Is that
And
the
the
Big,
Chrysler?
huge thing, yes.
No, okay.
And when Micah moved out, I mean, he put everything he owned in it, including a bed, fit in it.
but
I remember it was a big car.
one thing, there wasn't anything that you needed, nothing that you
Oh.
wanted.
Like when you graduated from high school.
Like when you,
Oh, we came into some money and we made a loan to each of the other kids.
Wasn't
It's
this?
true. But you didn't want any money. You didn't need anything.
This was after Della died, if I remember. Wasn't
Yes.
it like some
Yes.
insurance money
Yes.
and?
Yes. But with Ezra and Jamie got $25,000, and they bought furniture and things with it and paid off some debts or whatever they needed. And Micah got some money and Joseph got some money.
oh, Micah, we got him his house.
Oh,
That's what he did.
oh, he bought his first house up in Sacramento.
I remember that
But
house.
we kept trying to encourage you. What do you want there? Well, there's no money to give you now, so you just lost out. But yeah, that was something.
But that's one thing, all of our children,
Well, I wasn't at a state to buy a house, so I
Yeah,
wasn't. I
I
didn't
know.
need furniture either.
Well,
so.
wait a
None
minute.
of
We
our-
fixed your car. That ought to be it.
none of our children have anything,
Outstanding debt.
no, they don't compete
Oh,
with each other.
yeah.
And, I mean, you might do it on the side or that,
Tease each other.
but as far as the money goes, it never has
It's never been important.
important to
It's
you.
never been important to us, unless maybe there's a week that it's going real tight. But we have friends whose children, money was very important to them, and they always had name brand clothes, things like that. But
And they used to have
our kids wear clothes from TI and
those, but they used to have to imagine each child would have to
oh,
be exactly the same
number of presents to open at Christmas,
and the same
things like
value.
same value. It just,
We won't say who.
I know, but I've met we had other people,
Yeah,
and that they counted every present that was around the tree, and they all had to be the same number and the same amount value. That
But
was
it
somebody
didn't-
else.
didn't have to be
But-
with you guys.
It's never been that important, but there was a time that 8-Ball was folding, and we were on church assistance. I was Relief Society president and got to fill out my own food assistance. I have been really grateful that the bishop didn't say, well, you've got a lot of food storage, this is the time to use it. Because I never could have replaced it. So, and the food that we got from the church was delicious. Delicious.
For the first couple weeks at least.
Well, we're on there for several months, and when Micah was on his mission, we were not expecting to have anything but the greatest blessings when our son was out on a mission. But when he left, we could not send him out with a full wardrobe. He went to Pennsylvania, where it's cold in the winter, and he did not go with a winter coat. But Jack and Mom sent him a winter coat. He had a nice winter coat, so that was the thing. And when he was out, he was from California, so he wasn't used to walking on ice. You have to walk differently when you're on ice. So he slipped and fell and broke his tailbone. And his comment to me was, well, Mom, you know they don't put a cast on a tailbone, but who'd want to sign it anyway? So, dig up some more memories.
Well, I got one that I'd want to close on, but so
Okay.
before I get to that, Dad, you look almost like you have something to say.
It's gone,
Yeah.
usually before I can say it.
Well, one particular story I wanted to. Oh, actually, no. I guess I have two things. One, going back to your inability to have children. You had a blessing from
Marky Peterson.
Marky Peterson. You also had some sort of operation around then.
Oh, yeah.
Before then. I mean, we were trying different things, and one blessing had told us that we needed to seek the help of the men of medicine. So I had surgery. What we finally found out why I couldn't have children was when I was 2 years old, my appendix ruptured. And it just ruined the fallopian tube on one side. And the other fallopian tube had a lot of scar tissue around it. So the surgery I had kind of peeled back the one with the scar tissue and made it available. But then the other one was stunted. It never grew.
It was down in LA.
Yeah. Oh, well, actually the surgery was in San Francisco. But the doctor who was doing it moved to LA after that, and I would fly down every month because I had to have some follow-up visits. But yeah, until
I
it was
remember
done.
driving up Highway 5.
Oh yeah, in a car with me after surgery.
Right.
Well, why was I in a hospital in San Francisco?
Well, that was later on. But that one,
Yeah, and you know, everybody kept saying, well, you really should fly her home. Fly her home. I said, no, our car seats just lay back, not a problem. I should have flown home. But then that has its own challenges too, so I don't know. But,
yeah, but the
The ride was too bouncy for you. I'm just not sure
yeah,
what that is.
it was. I mean, it was,
the
could have used better shocks.
now
Okay, there was another question about, oh, you know, there's something that happened that was very, very sacred. And maybe I'll tell you after it's off, and then we can decide if we ever want to put it on tape. But what was your other question?
Well, just talking about the still on the getting surgery. There was one other point that you hadn't mentioned, and that was about how the doctors said that if this works, you'll only be able to have one child.
Or two. Well, okay. Well, they didn't say that at the time. But when I went back in and I was either pregnant with you or Joseph, because it was at Kaiser, and he was taking my medical history, and I told him about the surgery that I'd had.
He says,
And
"That's
then-
surgery."
Yeah, and I said, well, apparently it's working really well. And the doctor said, you know, they've done some research and some follow-ups now that that surgery's been a few years ago. I think they've stopped doing it.
That specific surgery or that type of surgery?
That's type of surgery. And he said, of the people that have had that surgery, they have had one child. A few have had two, not four. So would you tell me, Mrs. Child, how you got this baby? I said,
No.
well, we pray a lot. He says, well, that's how you got it.
Turn it off for a minute and we'll discuss what you wanted to do.
Well,
No, he had another question.
yeah, one other one. Oh, though, just one quick thing about the surgery. What was the time frame of the surgery between the surgery and the blessing you got
I
from
think it was
our
at least 6 months. At least 6 months.
And what? So you had the surgery and you had the blessing about 6 months later.
Oh, probably even more.
Could have been.
Yeah.
I don't
because-
think it was as much as a year, but it could have been.
Yeah, it was a long, because I was.
We had the blessing about February. March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November.
I was the Elders Quorum president. I was doing all that.
So I
didn't I?
must have got pregnant in March. We had the blessing in February. Yeah. And,
Well, tell.
but that was,
What's this story that you?
well, you have to
Well-
turn it off. You know, it's not something I really mind sharing, but you're always cautioned if something is very sacred, you don't just throw it out there.
Well, I mean,
How it's shared.
at the very least, this individual file that I'm recording will continue to exist on my computer in my files. Somebody may find it down the road. It wouldn't necessarily be something I would share online,
Okay.
or
But it would, you know,
It
maybe
would.
after we're dead and gone.
What's this?
So, and I feel like we were really blessed. We've had 2 miscarriages when we were first married. We had a miscarriage where I was teaching school and student teaching, and out there with all the germs, and I got really sick and ran a real high temperature. And right after that, I could tell I wasn't pregnant anymore. It killed the baby. Then it passed. And there was a miscarriage between you and Joseph. And we were living on Azalea Court at the time.
That first miscarriage, we got a
A typewriter.
typewriter on it. And we had insurance on it.
Some kind of insurance, yeah.
It was amazing that we had
Paid the
insurance.
hospital bill, and there was $50 left over, and we bought an electric typewriter. That we had for many years. It was stored out in the shed in Solano Road for a long time. I don't know what we ever did with it, but it's a lot of things we've had. I don't know what we did with, but look at all the stuff we still have. We wish we didn't have. So, is there?
well, the story I wanted to get and conclude with was actually the one you shared about how you were told that you weren't going to have children.
And that's the one. But I just thought of, or just remember that before we took our flight to Disney World, Ezra and Tommy and probably one of you boys were out in the backyard playing ball. And they weren't using a softball with a bat, they were using a big rubber ball. And they recoil differently. And Ezra swung at it and hit it, but the bat recoiled and whacked him in the forehead. And we had to take him down and get stitches. And they would come out while we were in Disney World. So the doctor gave me a suture removal kit. And I took his stitches out in Disney World. You had stitches we were walking into church, we were hurrying, because we were always a little bit late, and we were hurrying, and as we were walking in the door, and of course the door had these metal edges to it, there was a big mat in the front, and you tripped on the mat and fell forward and hit the door
Just
right
as I
there. Yeah, opened it.
Bang.
So I just looked at you and I said, okay, you take the others into church, we'll go down to the hospital. I was the stitches mom, and when Joseph broke his bones, he was the bone parent. I was the stitches parent. We had it all divided up. We won't talk about running over your foot either, but that one's too upsetting. But, yeah, I
I remember-
guess that's it. Yeah, I'm sure you remember that one. And
I was going
don't
to say, I
think-
remember stitches when I was, I think, a teenager and got glass that cut my.
Oh, a mirror had broke.
It wasn't mirror. It was just panes of glass.
Was
we
it?
had
Okay,
large
it was out
panes.
on the patio.
It was back. It was at a point when we were no longer, because I remember when money was tight, we stopped paying for garbage service. And we got like a big old bin that we would always take all the garbage out to and dump it in that, and then when it got full we would take that down to the dumps. And we did that when money got tight, and then when we got out of the financial thing we continued to do that.
Oh.
And so it was at some point when we were doing that, and
It
I
was
was
out on the patio and it was dark. It was night.
well, it was just starting to be twilight. It wasn't really dark yet. And it was, I remember I was taking the trash out, and for whatever reason, sitting with the trash, there were these very large panes of glass. And I had, I don't know why they were there, but they were there. Very large panes of glass that were being thrown out as well. I put the trash bag into the bin, and when the lid came down and shut, it jostled everything. The glass fell down, broke, and I remember Micah was on his mission at this time. I remember because I wrote about it in a letter to him. Possibly when Joseph was on his mission, but I think it was Micah. I remember writing to one of my brothers about it while they were on their mission. The glass shattered, broke into big pieces, several pieces. It wasn't shattered, it was big pieces that it broke into. And I'm reflexively jumping back, but one of the pieces manages to go forward right toward me, and it really just bumped my my leg. It was by my ankle, and which was odd. It hit the denim pants that I was wearing, scuffed them a little. And I remember after that I walked into the house because it kind of hurt because I just got bumped by the glass. And we could see a little bit of scuffing on the denim pants, pulled that up, and there was a big old spot of blood on the sock. And the sock I don't think was cut, I think it was just bloodied. And then we pulled the sock back and the skin had basically just split. It went through and just split the skin. Didn't split my pants, didn't split my sock, just the skin.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and that what I remember was an odd one.
I think you've had more stitches than anybody else.
I don't think so. Because, if we count, I guess there was also the lawnmower with my foot.
Yeah. But Ezra only had that one time with stitches that I can remember. Joseph broke an arm at school, and then in college broke 2 bones in a leg. And I don't think he's had, that was Joseph. And Ezra, okay, I don't think Joseph's had stitches except because of surgery. But Micah one day, I can remember him being in the ER, and they were trying to clean his knee because he had a lot of little rocks and things embedded in it. And they had to clean it up and take a look at it before they could do anything. I don't know if he's ever had stitches, I can't remember.
Did they? I want to say it was Ezra that got scratched by the chicken. Did he get stitches for that?
No.
It was Joseph, wasn't it?
I thought it was Ezra.
Was
But
it?
I thought it was Ezra, but
Well, did you tell the story about the boys and the chicken? Well, there also we had problems with a possum, and we had a big stack of hay in the back, And Ezra climbing around in it, and found a little nest of baby mice and got bit. But we found out that mice don't carry rabies, so he lived through that one. And we had a lot of different chickens at different times. We've had different animals at different times, but
It was a rooster, wasn't it?
Yeah, when this rooster,
attacked Ezra.
he was,
Mean.
that was the last straw. And I went out with my shotgun.
I think, as I recall, there's the kids were frequently afraid of this rooster, and I want to say that you kind of were casual about it, like you were thinking the kids were just overreacting or just
Yeah.
being scared, and you didn't give it much thought until one day you see Ezra, we think it was, coming back with big old cut up right above his eye.
Oh, I thought it was. Oh, I just knew it was around his eye.
It was around his eye. I don't remember where. I don't remember it. I just remember hearing this story several times.
Well, at that time, I took a shotgun out and I took care of the. It took 2 blasts to knock the thing down.
Well, what about the one that you butchered so we can eat?
That's when
Okay.
Now I wonder if that was it or was it a different one.
Well,
I think it was
you
a
were
different one.
gonna- You were going to
Okay.
chop his head off.
Well,
We had a stump.
that's what we had a stump. We were going to chop the head off of the rooster, I think, and
I thought it was a chicken for this one, but
No, it was a rooster.
I told these kids, well, you might not want to see this, and they all ran off. So okay, so I went and the rooster got back, and here they come with their chairs all lined up in there so they could watch it.
We only ever killed one because then you have to pluck them. And you have to dip them in boiling water and you have to pluck them. And then after we got it all plucked and we could cook it, I boiled that thing forever. And it was still tough and stringy and we couldn't eat it. And I thought, you know, for $2 you can go to the grocery store, find one all wrapped up in a piece of saran wrap with no feathers on it, ready to eat, all the guts cleaned out of it.
Yeah.
No, we never killed any more of them.
After that, I gave them to the person with
A Vietnamese.
Vietnamese wife.
And
That was Brother Moss.
yeah, he's on our Facebook list, and his wife died a few years ago. But yeah, she knew what to do with them. That didn't bother her at all. And when people would sometimes bring us this chickens, so we got chickens in different ways. But like, we got one of those chickens that had the big fluffy feathers on top of its head and everything. Or people had them for Easter and then they couldn't keep them, they became chickens. So we had several chickens and she threw them in her trunk and took the chickens. And then the little girl who gave us her pet chicken came and wanted to see it. She brought some food for it and wanted to see. I don't know, it's around here somewhere. We just let them go where they want.
So just leave the food and we'll...
Yeah. But
Okay.
John Lyon came over one day and said, you gotta keep your chickens penned in your yard. They're coming over and eating all my cat's food. So every day they'd parade over to his house.
that's
and parade
quite a
back.
trek for them, I think.
Just across the street.
Well, for a chicken though,
Yeah.
that was in almost to the back pasture where we had the chicken coop.
At the front of the back pasture.
Yeah.
So there were chickens, there were horses. We had Dad's horse, and I just remember one night laying in bed because we were on the street side for our bedroom, and you hear this clippity-clop, 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 and then it would turn around and go clippity-clop, 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 back and forth, and we wondered who had their horse out. So we checked it out, and it turned out it was the horse that should have been in our back pasture, but we got him in. Now, cows, when they get out and you round them up again, they go right back into the hole where they got out. so you know where to fix the fence. Horses don't do that for you. But yes, we did get them back, and
So that was Molly?
we have pictures. He got it for his 65th birthday.
Yeah.
Molly.
Molly was staying at our house. Was that like a regular thing, or?
Well, he didn't have a pasture at his house, so she stayed at our house. And he bred her once. She had a little colt called Trigger. And and he had a pony. Do you remember a white pony back there? Well, yeah, there was a white pony.
You're about to say something about Molly and Trigger?
Well, unfortunately, the Molly got out of the trailer enough to be banged up, and until he could pull over, and we had to put him down after that because they were so beat up they couldn't function.
Both of them?
No, just
Molly.
no, not Molly. Colt.
Trigger.
Trigger.
Because he wasn't in a horse trailer. He was like in a trailer
Oh, he was
being
in.
I think Molly was in a pickup and he was in a little trailer behind her. So
Whatever.
they could see each other, but anyway, he jumped out and had to be put down. And Molly was too old. She was a much older horse. He felt lucky to be able to breed her. So,
Oh, hated that horse.
yeah.
I was holding the rope, a nylon rope about that big around, you know, as
No gloves.
with no gloves, as Dad was doing something to her, and she jerked her head up and my
And
hands went just blood red from the rope, you know. It was a nylon rope and right up through it. And it was, I hated that horse.
And when we went on our trip all around the United States, we took Allie, but we lost him on the trip. Some friends watched Frida for us while we were gone. We got her back and we moved out to Solano Road, and she,
Who are Allie and Frida?
dogs.
Okay.
And Allie was more like a Doxy, a little bigger than a Doxy, and Frida was very much like Skippy. And she was terrier, and the fox terrier in her came out, the rat terrier, whatever, and she'd go out there and she'd just kill chickens just like that, snatch them and snatch them and snatch them. And they said, well, in order to get her so she doesn't want to kill the chickens anymore, tied her on her neck. She dragged this dead chicken around all day, but she was still a chicken killer. And so we finally had to get rid of her. It was her or the chickens, and she was so quick at killing them. So.
She was killing the chickens at the house in Solano? Okay.
They were free range at that time when we first moved and first had chickens. And David put some chickens in a pen, and he'd go out and talk to his girls now and then and pick up the eggs. And then we had mice that liked to live down in the droppings under the cages. And he had a cat in there one day, and that cat, snatch, 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 had all these mice that she just swallowed.
There was at least 5 mice.
And
she
the very last one she couldn't quite get it swallowed, and she's sitting there with his tail hanging down. And we had cows.
I remember the cows getting out sometimes.
Yeah. But we had them to eat. So we take them and have them butchered, and it got so that, you know, after a while we got really tired of beef, and I felt guilty when I had to buy a chicken or a piece of pork or something because, and we had pigs back there, and the boys, Joseph and Ezra, both did the FHA thing.
I don't remember us having pigs at our house.
We did.
I remember having some in the freezer.
Oh,
I don't remember us raising pigs at our
Oh,
house.
yeah, yeah, we raised pigs.
well, they
Bob
raised
and I
them and
would-
sold them. Oh,
Bob
yeah.
and I would each buy a pig, and they would,
You
and-
go to the grocery store and get leftover milk and eggs and stuff.
Tell about Joseph raising the pig at the school thing and when he went to sell it.
yeah.
That's
That was
a great
an interesting story. Joseph went, he raised his pig and everything, and
For an ag class
Yeah.
at high school.
And then they take it to the fair and sell them.
and
County fair.
this, and I had
Stephen. came.
Stephen with me, and I said, I'm kind of worried about it. I'm afraid he's not gonna get much money. I can only,
We can
do
only
so
raise-
much.
Yeah.
and,
So is this
So-
Steve Humphrey?
Yeah,
yeah,
he's
so
a real salesman.
he went down and he was talking with the,
People that buy them. Sometimes
The folks for like Safeway.
Safe-
yes,
Safeway and
Albertsons. yeah.
Albertsons and that, and he was talking around, oh, this guy, he's gonna, what did he say? He says
I think
about,
He basically described
needed-
Joseph as being poor. I think.
yeah, poor, and he needed the money, and all that, all a sob story, and that, and then he comes out on the thing and walks the pig back and forth, and these people are bidding, and they bid more for his pig than the
Prize winning pig.
the one that won the first prize got, it was embarrassing. So, whew. I mean, I started off one bid, and then they just went ahead with it. That was remarkable.
Yeah, I remember my brothers doing that ag class, and I especially remember Joseph because I was closer to Joseph and I was a bit older, and I remember all the money he got from selling it, and it's like I was a bit jealous, I'll admit, of all this neat stuff that he bought because he suddenly had this huge thing of money, which at that age as a kid you don't really get money like that, so you don't get to go to the store and go out and buy a nice CD player and all these CDs and things like that, and so I was a bit jealous of him. I remember.
Is that what he did with his money? I don't remember.
I don't know if that's all he did with it. I'm sure he like saved some for his mission or something like that, but I just remember that it was the money he got from that he used to buy a CD player and some CDs, which was really kind of newfangled for us at the time. I mean, technology wasn't completely new, but it was still new for us. And I remember being jealous of that, but by the time I got to high school, which was not long after Joseph, in fact, actually, Joseph
3 years between you.
Joseph graduated 1 year and I came in the very next year. But so when I had gotten to high school, though, they stopped that ag program. So I couldn't participate in that. I couldn't raise a pig and sell it as he did. Which is one of many stories that I personally could share of my brothers doing things that I didn't get to partake in. Just
It must be terrible to be 3 years younger. The baby of the family. You didn't get to go off by yourself when we went to Disney World and have a good
No.
time, but oh, you poor thing. Well, there's a lot more stories, but it's been
Yeah.
over an hour.
yeah, we got all the stories I really wanted to get that I might put in for the video, and we just kind of went on from there and shared a lot of stories, which keep for posterity. I think it's a
Well, for
Great thing to do.
posterity's sake, you ought to tell them about Petunia.
yeah, sure. If we're talking about raising pigs, I don't think we have that one recorded.
It was David's birthday, And his
And
dad,
he got a pink
Got
ribbon around.
a little piglet for his
Piglet.
birthday. And he called her Petunia.
So
So we
Might have
went
this
back
one.
in the
I'm not
back.
sure. But tell it anyways.
We raised Petunia. And David was home teaching a man who had raised pigs in the past, so he knew what he's doing. There's a lot of things living out there we learned the hard way. We learned by doing it and screwing it up, basically.
So getting Petunia was while you guys were living at Solano?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I thought this was like when you were in high school or
No,
something.
no. And because he decided that instead of butchering her, he was going to breed her. And he talked to this man that he home taught, and he had a friend who had a boar that he would bring over. And I guess that boar, whenever he saw the guy come out with his little trailer, was happy to jump in it and take a ride to his thing. And then,
Or was trained and knew what was going on.
yeah, he remembered that part. But anyway, so the man came over first and looked at our...
while I was
He
gone.
was gone. So he came back and he went back to the back and looked at the pig. And he was telling David, I came over and looked, but I couldn't find your sow.
All I saw was a
A boar, a
neutered boar.
neutered boar.
And turned out that they had a big tit on its stomach, and David thought that was what it was. And so we wound up butchering her and eating her.
Boy, I'll
With him.
bet butchered her right away too.
But it was so funny and embarrassing and funny. You know, those are just one of the many things you learn the hard way. Like,
if he
make
had
sure your fences are
if he had
so the
brought-
cows can't get out.
brought that pig over,
Oh, gee.
oh,
At least that hadn't happened yet.
Well, and there was also another story about Petunia. I want to say it was one of your sisters who came over.
Yep.
For dinner.
we
And we were serving
we
Petunia.
were serving Petunia, but we didn't
Who
tell
was
her
this,
that.
though?
Initially,
Linda.
Linda.
we told Linda, "Oh, this is Petunia you're eating."
She wouldn't finish her dinner. Linda thinks, or at least she can live with herself by believing that meat grows in the back of the grocery store and comes to you, and they pick it up and put it in these little packages all nice. She doesn't think of it as flesh of an animal. But, I mean, she's very tender-hearted. She's one of the most generous, kind, loving people I know. Very practical in a lot of ways. And makes the best tacos you've ever eaten in your life.
Is she the one that fries the shell right there?
Oh yeah, you put all that oil in the shell in, and it's a great taco, and she's just got all kinds of fillings for it and everything. That was wonderful. But yes, but meat just grows in the little packages that you buy at the store. Okay. I
Okay.
do remember that when we were on food assistance, we had helped another friend, and when we were on food assistance, she brought over some boxes of cereal that are not available on food assistance that our children just loved, and we weren't buying them the kind of cereal they liked.
But we were,
I kind of remember that.
yeah, and we would send beef home with her, with her son. What's his,
Well, anyway, and her son lived with us for a while too. It was a legal thing that the courts ordered.
we would send him back with beef.
For their family.
Yeah,
Oh, we had plenty of beef.
yeah.
If we have it, we never mind sharing anything. But and after I had my surgery,
Which
bariatric surgery,
Oh,
and I was kind of, we moved a recliner into the bedroom, and I spent a lot of time in there. It was a hard one to recover from. For one thing, I was 50 years old, and it was scar from here to here. And,
Kind of ripped some things out of you too. I
yeah,
mean,
well, yeah, and at any rate, and to heal from that, she came over and cleaned my bedroom for me. Rearranged things and dusted and had it all nice and clean, and it was very pleasant to sit in with everything in orderly and clean again. So, she was a good friend. Oh, I was getting my nails done at that time, but I couldn't, in my mind, justify spending money to get my nails done when I was using money from the church, because he also helped us with our utilities. And someone asked me, well, the lady I go to only charges $13. He says, I can't even justify $13, so I had her take my nails off. I put them on again when I was teaching school. I could afford it then. But it's too much trouble to keep up. Okay. I think we've covered a lot of it.
Yeah, I think there's enough there.
yeah, I'm certainly satisfied.